Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Douglas Noll, and he's here today to share with us how to cultivate harmonious relationships. Now, many of you remember Douglas. He was here to share with us his book, De-Escalate, How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less. Douglas left a successful career as a trial lawyer to become a peacemaker. Doug is an award-winning author, teacher, trainer, and highly experienced mediator. Doug's professional work has led him to help others solve deep interpersonal and ideological conflicts. As a co-founder of Prison of Peace, a nonprofit dedicated to reducing violence and promoting peaceful conflict resolution among prison inmates, Doug has worked with thousands of individuals and groups on the importance of listening and successful communicating. So let's welcome to the show, Douglas Noll.
Hey, Marianne, great to talk to you again.
Oh my goodness. You know what? We need you now more than ever.
Well, thank you. It's a little tumultuous out there. And,
to say the least. Yeah.
Between the economy and the pandemic and the politics, people are getting pretty upset about a lot of things. So...
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy how it is right now. And you know what? I'm so glad that we're having this discussion about de-escalate again, because I think it bears repeating. It has such great information. You know, what are some of the things that we can learn now in how to de-escalate situations? Because everyone's, fit to be tied.
Well, I think what we can, I think that what we have to recognize is that when both societally and personally, we are in the kind of what I would call chaos that we're in now, that this is a deeply emotional experience. And if we try to approach what we're experiencing with logic or rationality, it's not going to work because we're 98% emotional and 2% rational. And there is no rational way to figure out how to solve all the problems that we all individually face with social distancing, masking or not masking, the political polarization, pandemic out here in California, the fires that got within 10 miles of my ranch. I mean, it's crazy. And that craziness is emotionality. So the key to de-escalation, first of all, is recognizing that we are highly emotional and we're in an environment right now that is triggering a lot of emotion in a lot of people. And if people can just make that shift and just recognize there's no rationality here and nobody can be rational, that's the first big step. Understanding that our human behaviors are all driven by emotion, not by logic or rationality. That's step number one. And then once we recognize that what people are doing is having an emotional experience, the next thing we can do is look at our own experiences. So what am I feeling right now? Am I anxious? Am I angry? Am I a little scared? How do I, not what do I think about, but how do I feel about all this political stuff? So for example, the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, brilliant jurist, but she's got her views and could be she's a very polarizing nomination. So I would ask people, how do I feel about that? Is this something that makes me happy or fearful or scared or satisfied? I mean, if you can label your own emotional experience on whatever the topic might be, or whatever the issue might be, then you go a long ways towards calming yourself down. So, for example, you could be out and about wherever you live and you see people with masks or not wearing masks, and you could say, how do I feel about that? What feelings are coming up inside of me? Do I care? Does it make me anxious? Does it make me angry? And if you can label what you are experiencing in the moment, you can go a long ways towards calming yourself down. And the reason this works is because of a seminal study done by Matthew Lieberman, a neuroscientist at UCLA back in 2007. And he found in his brain scanning studies that when we can label our emotions, he called it putting feelings into words, it has an effect of shutting down the emotional centers of the brain and reactivating the executive centers of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. And it does it within 30 or 40 seconds. And so this is all based on neuroscience. This isn't any pop psychology. It's based on how our brains are actually hardwired. And I've seen this work thousands and thousands of times. And I teach it. And I've seen thousands of my students master these skills and have incredible results. So the number one, be aware that we're in an emotional experience, not a rational experience. Rationality is not going to soothe us or help us in any of the problems we're facing today. Number two, be very conscious of our emotional experience by labeling what we're feeling. Put the feelings into words and be very conscious of what you're feeling, and then observe how you'll start to calm down. That's number two. And then number three is, if you have emotional people around you, start listening to their emotions. What are they feeling? What are they experiencing? And it's going to be exactly the same thing that you're feeling. You know, we human beings have a very limited repertoire of feelings and emotions. Yeah, we have a lot of emotional words, but they all come down to the same basic ideas. And you can pretty much guarantee that if you're feeling angry or anxious or frustrated around what you see going on around you, then just about everybody around you is going to feel angry and anxious and frustrated too. So it's very simple to identify the emotions of others. And then here's the thing that's really the kicker. Tell them what they're feeling. Oh, you're really anxious. Oh, Marianne, you're really frustrated and angry about what you see around you. And the same brain study that I talked about shows that when you do that to people, it's called affect labeling. When you affect label people, their brains calm down and they get this sense of ease about them, and they start to relax and they feel validated, and they'll actually thank you for listening to them, even though you're doing something really weird, which is telling people how they feel. And it's amazing how it works. And it's just because of the neuroscience, how our brains are hardwired. It's incredible how all this works. So 3 things. Be aware that we're in an emotional experience. Label your own emotions to calm yourself down. And then listen to and label the emotions of others to calm them down. I call it listening others into existence. You're going to listen them into existence by listening to their emotions and reflecting back what they're experiencing. Powerful stuff.
Oh my gosh, that is so powerful, is right. Do you think most people get hung up on the listening part because they're trying to figure things out and really not active listening?
Yeah, you have to learn how to do this. This is not something that's just intuitive. In fact, it's counterintuitive. And typically in a conversation, people focus on what they're going to say next. They're really not listening to what the other person is saying. And in fact, for the kind of deep listening that I'm talking about, you ignore the words. You don't even listen to the words, because what you want to do is pay attention to the emotions. And that really kind of freaks people out, because ever since the time we were little toddlers, we were taught, pay attention and listen to me. And what listen to me means is listen to my words. But the words only convey 7% of all communication that humans transmit to each other. 93% of what we communicate is nonverbal, and it's emotional. And that's what we should be paying attention to. So it takes a little bit of practice and skill to learn how to ignore the words and pay attention to the emotions, and learn how to listen to the emotions rather than listening to the words or thinking about what am I going to say next. Tricky.
That is tricky because most of the time people are formulating their thoughts and like, oh, well,
That's
this is
right.
how I'm going to reply. I've got that little tidbit I'm going to get back on.
That's right.
Instead of being present.
That's right. And in fact, if you watch arguments happen, which I do as a mediator, you'll see people processing that. You know, they'll be sitting and getting all fidgety because they want to jump in and argue their point. They're not even listening to what the other person is saying. They're so, in arguments, people are so intent on coming up with a rejoinder that's going to crush you and make you just bow in obeisance to my brilliance and how stupid you are, right? That they're not even listening to the other side. And of course, that's what causes upset, because if people don't feel like they're being listened to at a deep level, then they're going to start yelling louder. It's like being on a river. You know, if I'm on a whitewater river, I've got to shout to make myself heard across the whitewater noise. We have this natural reaction that if we don't feel like we're being listened to, we're going to raise our voice because we're not feel like we're being listened to. And so just instinctively, we're going to raise our voice. And that you'll notice this in arguments. The voices get louder and louder and louder and louder. And that's a sure indication that you aren't listening to each other. And so the secret is in that situation is to stop, ignore the words, listen to the emotions, and just reflect back the emotions with a simple you statement. Oh, you're really angry. You're really frustrated. You don't feel like you're being listened to. You feel completely unsupported. You feel sad. Oh, you feel completely abandoned and unloved. Stuff like that.
That's good stuff. That is good stuff. Do you ever get people who maybe are stuck in ego and say, well, no, I'm not feeling that way. I'm not feeling anxious when, they're just like, pretty much making everyone around them anxious,
Right. So you get that occasionally. And I hang with them. Oh, so you're not anxious. You're just really frustrated. Yeah. And you don't feel like anybody's listening to you. Yeah. You don't feel supported. Yeah. And you feel you're a little worried about this. Yeah, I'm really worried. So, yeah, you're really anxious about this. It's kind of making your skin crawl. Yeah, I'm really anxious. So you notice how I circled back to anxiety, even though they denied it in the beginning. The reason that people are going to deny that I'm not angry, I'm not frustrated, you'll get that, is because they are frustrated, they are angry, they are anxious, but their prefrontal cortex is shut down. So they can't even label themselves what they're feeling. It's physically impossible for them to be aware of their own emotions because their prefrontal cortex is shut down, and that's where all the emotional processing is done. The emotions arise in parts of the brain called the limbic system, but the processing part, the cognitive part, is done in the prefrontal cortex. And if it's shut down, then all we can do is just react to whatever we're experiencing and not understand it and not process it. So what you have to do is continue to work with them, try to find an emotion that they will agree to, and then just keep labeling and then circle back to where they were, and then they'll agree to it. All the time I hear stuff like, oh, hey man, you're really pissed off. You're really angry. I'm not angry. Right. I say, oh, you're really frustrated. Yeah. And then I'm thinking about, well, why might he be or she frustrated? Well, it might be, okay, nobody's listening to you. You don't feel supported. Yeah. You feel like you're being treated unfairly. Yeah. You feel like, nobody's agreeing with you. Yeah. You feel a little bit worried about that and concerned because of this. Yeah. And you feel a little sad because you feel all alone. Yeah. And it really kind of pisses you off. Yeah. So you're really angry. Yeah, damn right I am. It happens that way every single time. And all you have to do is just be patient. Don't take the denial, the initial rejection, as a rejection of you. Just understand that people, when they're emotional, they can't process this stuff. And your job is to help them process it by reflecting back the emotions. You are literally lending your prefrontal cortex to them for the 30 to 90 seconds it takes for them to begin to process what they're feeling. That's the beauty of this. It's amazing.
That is amazing because you can walk people through their emotions and then they can get up to a place where maybe they're not reacting, but they're really kind of responding to what's going on.
And it doesn't take very long. It takes 45 to 90 seconds and you can really calm 99% of the people down in about 45 to 90 seconds. And it works. And it works because that's the way our brains are hardwired. And that's that. I mean, and, people will say, well, they give me a little pushback on this. I say, look, I've acid tested this in maximum security prisons for the last 10 years, training murderers to be peacemakers. And in prison, when Laurel Coffer and I started the Prison of Peace Project, we knew that anything that we taught inmates had to work the first time, every time without fail, because our inmates would be confronting violent situations. And if they couldn't get people calmed down, there was going to be blood on the floor. So that's why this stuff works, because we've acid tested it in some of the most horrible places you can imagine. And it works beautifully. I mean, it's incredible. The stories we get back are just amazing. So yeah, it's powerful. Not only is there science, but there's years and years and years of practice behind all of this.
Well, that's a good thing because the holidays are coming up and who knows what the Christmas table or the Thanksgiving table is going to look like, right?
Right. It's going to be post-election and Uncle Charlie is going to have one political view and And, your brother is going to have another political view. And if people aren't careful about how they talk to each other, there's going to be, it could be a little intense. But you can't talk to each other about politically polarizing stuff if you just know the right questions to ask and how to go about doing it.
So what are some things that we would ask if, we're having political discussions? What would be some of the things that would be okay to ask that doesn't start a heated argument?
So 4 questions. The first question would be something like, hey, Marianne, I'm really interested in what life experiences have brought you to the political beliefs that you have today. What happened to you in your life that caused you to believe the way you believe today? Now, what happens when I ask you that question?
Well, you kind of think about your life story, kind of going,
yeah. And so you're going to start, and I'm inviting you to tell me a story about yourself, and everybody loves talking about themselves. And the other thing I'm doing is I'm not judging your beliefs. I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm not telling you you're an idiot. What I'm really doing is asking you to tell me how you formed your beliefs. And when you ask that question, amazing things kind of happen, because the first thing you'll learn is, if you listen and try not to tell your own story, is that the person's life experiences that formulate their beliefs led them to some values that are very similar to your own, and that we are different, yes, but only different very superficially. And that we have much, much more in common than we have differences. If you get a conservative and a more liberal person in a room and get them talking to each other in this way, what they will find is they have their deep values are all the same. They value freedom, they value democracy, they value the freedom of speech, they value the freedom of religion, they value the importance of family, they value the importance of safety. Everybody values the same things. And they're all kind of amazed that they've had these sharp political differences when in fact they all agree on the basics. And the only issue is, how do we achieve the basics? And then they begin to recognize that our political structure is set up to divide and conquer. And so that the politicians and political leaders, rather than trying to bring us together to solve common problems, even though we might have sharply different ways on how those problems should be solved, are really trying to divide us into camps, tribes, so that they can assure that they get our votes, and that we vilify the other side. And when people learn that, they become kind of aghast. Oh my God, I've been suckered into this political stuff by these people who are all they want is power. They want me to support their power, and they're not here trying to help us find common ground and solve common problems. And when people have that revelation, it's really quite shocking to them that that's the way it is. And that's the kind of revelation you can have. So that's question number 1. Now, as people are telling you the story, you're not commenting on it. You're not allowed to say yes, that's great, or no, or you can't comment on it. The most you can do is label their emotions, as we were just talking about. Affect label them. And you're not going to get a turn unless they invite you to tell you your life story. Just because you're inviting them to tell you how their beliefs form doesn't give you permission to tell them the same thing. They could probably care less. They're not interested, but you're interested in them, and that's all that really counts. Then the next question I would ask is, well, how do your beliefs help you in your everyday decision making? How do they help you navigate the world? And most people have never been asked this before. And so when they think about their beliefs, especially if they're political beliefs, they've got to think about, well, how do these political beliefs help me? And maybe they help in some ways and maybe they don't. But again, it gives you insight into how their beliefs are affecting their everyday decision making and their everyday life. And then the third question I ask is, okay, how do you deal with people who have different beliefs than you do? And the snarky answer is, of course, we shoot them, jail them up, lock her up, or whatever it might be. And I got to tell you that, we hear a lot of snarky comments on the right, but the people on the far left are far more difficult to deal with than the people on the far right in terms of engaging in these conversations. But eventually you'll get them if you're patient and you reflect and stay centered. you'll get them to start reflecting on what are the strategies that people use when they're dealing with people who are different. And that can be very insightful for everybody, for you and for the person you're talking with. And then the last question, which is the most interesting question, is to ask, well, how do we've got all these differing beliefs and values and conflicts in our society and culture. How do you think our society should be structured to accommodate all of these different beliefs? And for people who have very rigid beliefs, who want to see everything in the world agree with them, this is a very difficult question because they value liberty and democracy and freedom and free exchange of ideas on the one hand, and yet on the other hand, they're deeply concerned that culture and society is changing around them and that their values are no longer dominant values. And so now they have to really think about, well, how should we manage this? And it can get you into some really interesting discussions about what should our society look like in terms of how we deal with stuff. And again, as the listener and the person asking the questions, you're not making any judgments. You're not offering your own ideas. You're not contradicting. All you're doing is listening and reflecting emotions. And you will find that if you ask those 4 questions and come at it from a place of non-judgment and just interest, you will find that you have much, much more in common with people that appear to be politically radical than you might have thought. And that's how those conversations held hundreds of thousands of times around this country is how we're going to heal, not from anything that's going to happen in the election.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, our country does need a way forward to heal. And I really felt that your book is a great way, and the information that you talk about is a great way for people to start, because most people have no idea, if there's someone in their family that's opposing politically in views or any views, like why that is and why they've come to that belief system.
That's right. And the sad thing is that we are not trained in school or at home in how to manage our emotions and how to listen to each other. We're just not trained in how to do this. Part of that reason is because this is all new science. I mean, Lieberman's study came out in 2007, so not even 13 years ago. And so this is all new information. But the problem is that the people that should know are not propagating this information because they are too narrowly confined to their own academic traffic lanes and are not willing to look at the broader perspectives about what scientists are telling us is really going on in the brain. So that leaves it to people like me, sort of generalists, a lawyer turned peacemaker, to look at what the science is telling us and think about the broader implications and how do we apply this stuff in our everyday life. And that's kind of, the book, De-Escalate, How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less, which I wrote that. It was published in 2007. 2017. I wrote that at the request of inmates that I was training in prisons because they said, could you please write a book that we can give to our parents and give to our families and teach our families what we're learning in here? And that was really what drove the book. It was my 4th book. I really wasn't interested in doing another book, having written 3 before. but they really were insistent, and so that's what drove the book. And the book is, it was 3 years ago that the book came out, and yet today it's even more relevant than it was back then. And so I'm just totally driven to teach people these skills because I've seen how powerful they are and how they reduce anger in families and how they help people listen to each other and create deep, meaningful relationships with each other that they're lacking and they desire. They really want this stuff, and yet they just don't know how to get there. And the book just teaches you the ideas on how to get there. So it's been pretty exciting. It's an exciting journey.
Yeah. Your book is so powerful. I've used it myself to help people move, discussions forward in a way that impacts everybody around. And I love how your book is also useful for parents to use with children.
That is the thing that, I wrote the book, the way I structured the book is through the arc of life. So the first 3 chapters kind of lay out the basic concepts. And then when I start with dating and relationships, and then move to raising children and then deal with more negative stuff like divorce and things like that. As a lawyer, I never practiced criminal law, but since I've left the practice of law and been doing the kind of work that I do today, I've become convinced that murderers are not born, they're made. And we can stop the cycle of violence and the cycle of crime if we as a society are willing to invest in training parents how to raise emotionally competent children. And parents don't know how to do that because they weren't taught that themselves, and their parents weren't taught that. Nobody knew how. And so we go through this process of emotional invalidation. I mean, the example that I give is when I was a 2 or 3 year old out running around as a little boy and I fall over and scrape my knee. What was I told? Rub dirt in it. It doesn't hurt. Stop crying. Don't be a sissy. Don't be a little girl. Big men don't cry. I was told not to feel emotion. And every man I've ever talked to, same way. And not just in the Western world, but in other places in the world too. It seems to be pan-cultural. And a lot of women I've talked to talked about the emotional abuse they suffered as little girls. And parents do this because when a child is upset and emotional, it provokes anxiety in the parent. And the one thing the parent wants to do is get rid of that anxiety. So shut up, stop crying. It's the worst thing you can do to a child. Worst thing you can do to a child. It damages that child in hugely deep ways. And it's emotionally wounding. And yet we all do it. It's pervasive and insidious, this emotional invalidation. Instead, all we have to do is say something like, "Oh, Lovey, you scraped your knee. You hurt. That hurts. You're scared. You're upset." And I would say as a little boy, "Yeah, no, it hurts. Oh, it really hurts, and you're really upset about it. Yeah." The tears will go away. The crying will stop because the child has been validated. And now you can, let's put a little Bactine on that and see if we can't fix it right up. And now you can move into problem solving. And I've taught people that parents how to do this, and we're working with 2 and 3 year olds, and the tantrums stop in about 6 months of doing this. There are no more tantrums because the children's emotions are being validated. So if you want to raise emotionally resilient children and have them be really well-rounded, emotionally mature kids by the time they're teenagers, just affect label them when they're little. Teach them how to manage their own emotions. It's that powerful.
Well, it seems that these are life skills that people should learn at a very young age in elementary school. And I think this would be very new for a lot of parents as well. And so they're probably just propagating what they've learned.
That's right.
From their parents. And, we can do better.
That's right. We can do better. And it's not that hard. It's not that hard to learn. And when you learn it, this practice becomes self-reinforcing because you feel so good about yourself and you get so much gratitude from the people that you listen to in this way that all you want to do is listen in this way. And the old ways of listening just fall by the wayside because it's so much fun and so satisfying to listen people into existence.
So, Doug, if there's one important thing that our listeners can take away from your work, what would that be?
It's that we focus all of our time and life and education learning how to deliver communication by speaking or by texting or by email or by writing or whatever, but we don't spend any time learning how to listen. And you can't have effective communication unless you can do both. You can deliver a message and you can listen. And most importantly, we don't know how to listen to emotions, which is the most important thing we can listen to, far more important than the words, because as I said before, we're 98% emotional and 2% rational. So if listeners really want to transform their lives and transform the lives of their children and transform their careers, learn how to listen to emotions. Most important thing you can do. And that what will happen, as with the thousands and thousands of people I've trained over the years, is your life will transform in incredibly magical and powerful ways. And you'll be giving a gift of listening others into existence that will be unbelievable to you, and the people that you listen to will be eternally grateful that you validated them at a very deep level.
Well, thank you for that, Doug. My goodness, I know companies search you out because of your innovative practices and have you come and speak to their groups. If someone's looking to learn more or to work with you, how do they go about doing that?
Go to dougnoll.com, DOUGNOLL.com, and lots of resources there, and also on the contact page and in other places, my email address. I'll put that out there too. It's Doug, DOUG, at dougnoll.com. But I would suggest people just go to the website, dougnoll.com, check it out. And if what I write about and talk about on that site resonates with you, reach out to me, but via Zoom or email or whatever, and we'll chat. I was going to say, and I'll listen.
I should do a little bit better of that. My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Marianne, it's always a pleasure. I hope we can join up again soon.
Oh, my goodness. Without a doubt, Doug, we have the holidays coming up, and we're going to need some help on how to de-escalate some of those conversations. Again, if you'd like to connect with Doug and learn more about his book, De-Escalate, you can reach him at dougnoll.com for more information. De-Escalate is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers, and if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.